answered a Craigslist ad for a used generator the week after a bad storm knocked power out all over our county. People were panic buying anything that could keep a fridge running, and the ad I found was priced just low enough to feel like a deal, but not so low it screamed scam. The photos looked real: scuffed casing, a sticker half peeled, a driveway with leaves in it. The seller wrote a short description and ended it with, "Cash only, first come first, served." I texted. He replied fast. When I suggested meeting in a public lot, he pushed back immediately. "Can't," he wrote. "Generator's heavy, no truck. It's in my garage." I asked if he could at least roll it to the driveway. He said the driveway was blocked with debris from the storm and told me to use the side gate. He also added, "Don't bring a bunch of people. Neighbors complain." That should have ended the whole thing, but I rationalized it the way you do when you want something. I told myself he was just antisocial, not anything worse. On the way there, he kept texting little instructions. "Park at the end. Don't honk. Text when you arrive." It wasn't customer service. It was control, and I didn't label it as control until later. He said he was getting a lot of messages and asked if I could come that afternoon. I asked for a cross street. He sent an address in a neighborhood I knew by reputation. Not dangerous, just a little run down, like every house had been rented and re-rented for 20 years. I brought my cousin with me and told myself that was the safety plan. We left the cash at home and stopped at the bank near the address, so we wouldn't be driving around with money. It was the kind of thing you do when you're trying to be smart, but you're still going. The seller's house was at the end of a short dead-end street. The porch light was on even though it was daylight. Curtains were drawn tight. There was a handwritten sign on the door that said, "Please knock." A lot of normal people have signs like that. In this case, it felt like instructions. We knocked. After a long pause, a man's voice yelled, "Come around back." The side gate was open. We walked down a narrow path between the house and a chain-link fence and ended up at a detached garage with the door cracked open. The man was inside, standing in the shadow like he didn't want to step into the light. He looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe older, with a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't come out to greet us. He just nodded toward the generator sitting near the back wall. "Go ahead," he said. "Look at it. I'm not an expert, but I've owned enough tools to know when something's been sitting. This one looked like it had been cleaned. Not wiped down, cleaned, like somebody had tried to erase fingerprints off plastic." I crouched to check the oil cap, and that's when I noticed there were no other tool marks in the garage. No lawnmower, no rakes, no boxes, just a generator and an empty space. My cousin stayed near the door. He asked if we could start it. The man said he didn't have gas. Another normal thing, but he said it too quickly, like it was a line. Then he added, "I can show you it runs. Just step in a bit so I can pull it forward." We didn't step in. My cousin didn't move, and I didn't either. The man's eyes flicked to the open door, then to my cousin, then back to me. "Cash is fine," he said. $250. I told him I wanted to see it run first. He sighed like I was wasting his time and reached down behind the generator. I expected him to grab a pull cord or a gas can. He came up holding a small metal crowbar, not brandished, not waved, just held low at his side like it belonged there. My cousin didn't say anything. He just took one step backward, and I felt my stomach drop, because it wasn't a leave step. It was a get distant step. The man saw it, and his expression tightened. "Relax," he said. But his voice wasn't relaxing. He raised the crowbar a little, enough to make the message clear. "Don't make this hard, just hand it over." For half a second, my brain tried to bargain. Hand what over? The generator? The money? My phone? Then I realized it didn't matter. He wasn't selling a generator. He was selling the idea of one so you'd walk into his garage. I backed up and kept my hands visible. I said we didn't have the cash on us, which was true, and offered to leave. He took a step forward, and that's when I saw movement behind him, deeper in the garage. Another person, crouched near a shelf, stood up. I hadn't seen him at all because he'd been below the window line. He had gloves on like he'd been waiting. The first man's shoulders loosened like he felt supported now. He pointed the crowbar at the door and said, "Phone's on the ground, keys too." My cousin said, "No," in the flattest voice I've ever heard, and then he did something that probably saved us. He yelled the address at the top of his lungs, just screamed it, like he was narrating where we were to the entire neighborhood. The men froze for a beat, not because they were scared of us, but because sound travels on a dead-end street. I used that beat to shove the garage door wider and step out into daylight. My cousin followed. The first man lunged like he might swing, but he hesitated at the threshold, like he didn't want to be seen outside holding a crowbar. We didn't run straight to the car. We ran to the nearest house. A woman opened the door after my cousin pounded on it, and we tumbled inside like idiots. She didn't ask questions first. She looked past us toward the garage and shut the door. Then she called 911 while I tried to get my hands to stop shaking. From her front window, we could see the garage door slam shut. No one chased us. No one had to. The plan wasn't a movie chase. The plan was to keep it quiet. Police arrived fast because the street was small and the address was clear. They knocked on the garage and then on the back door of the house. No answer. They went around, checked windows, and eventually 2 officers forced the garage door up. Inside, the generator was gone, like it had never existed. The garage was empty except for a couple of scuff marks on the concrete and an oily outline where something heavy had sat. The officers took our statements, asked if we'd been hit, and told us we'd done the right thing by making noise and going to a neighbor instead of trying to handle it. One of them said they'd been called to that same address twice in the past month for Craigslist meetups that went bad. But by the time police arrived, there was never anyone home. A month later, an officer called to tell me the address belonged to a short-term rental that had been booked under a fake name. The actual owner lived in another state and had no idea people were using the garage. They never told me if anyone was arrested, but they did tell me my report matched others. I drove past that street a week later out of morbid curiosity and saw a for rent sign in the yard. The curtains were gone. The porch light was off. It looked like a normal empty house again, like it had never been used as a trap. I bought a generator from a hardware store and paid way more than $250. Every time it sputters to life, I'm grateful the only thing I lost that day was a little pride for thinking I could outsmart a stranger's deal. I was 21 and broke enough that sell something felt like a financial plan. I had an iPhone I'd paid off, kept in a case, and figured I could flip it on Craigslist in a day and use the cash to cover rent. I posted it with a handful of photos, the storage size, the carrier, and one line that said I wouldn't ship and I wouldn't accept anything except cash. Within an hour, I got a text from a number with an out-of-state area code. The guy wrote in short bursts like he was busy. Still got? Unlocked? Meet tonight? He didn't haggle, which should have been the first red flag because everyone haggles. He asked if I could meet at a grocery store parking lot by a highway exit. I suggested the police station lobby in my town. He replied, "Too far. Store is safer anyway. Cameras. Cameras." Like he'd rehearsed the word. I told him fine, but I brought my roommate with me. We parked under a light near the cart return, and I kept the phone in my pocket until I saw him. A dark sedan rolled in and didn't park right away. It looped once, slow, like it was counting people. Then it stopped a few spots away and idled. The driver didn't get out. A passenger did, and he walked over with his hood up, even though it wasn't cold. He introduced himself with a name I immediately forgot. He didn't look at my face when he talked, just my hands. He asked to see the phone. I held it up and kept my grip on it while he inspected the screen. He said he needed to check the IMEI and asked if I could unlock it so he could see it in settings. That's normal. So I unlocked it, and the second the home screen came up, his whole posture changed. He stopped acting like a buyer and started acting like a guy doing a job. "Go to your cellular settings," he said. Not asked. Said. I told him the phone was wiped and ready to set up. He frowned like that was inconvenient. Then he pulled his own phone out and showed me a screenshot of a carrier page with steps. He he wanted me to insert a SIM card he'd brought so he could test calls. He held up a tiny SIM tray tool and a SIM card in a plastic sleeve, like he'd done it 100 times. My roommate shifted behind me and asked why he couldn't just pop his SIM in his own phone if he wanted to test service. The guy's eyes flicked to him, and for a second I saw irritation. Then he did a fast smile and said, "Some phones are fake. I gotta verify." I said no. If he wanted to test, he could do it after he bought it, like everyone else. His tone hardened. "I'm not paying $200 for a brick. Put the SIM in." I told him I'd rather just leave. I turned a little, not fully, because I didn't want him close to my pocket. And that's when the driver finally got out of the sedan. He wasn't strolling over like another buyer. He was walking straight at me like he was stepping into a role. The passenger held his hands out in that fake calm way people do, right before they get aggressive. "Bro, don't make this weird. Just do the steps." I looked at the driver and realized he had his right hand tucked inside his hoodie pocket, and the pocket hung heavy. I don't know what was in there. I just know I didn't want to find out. My roommate said, "We're done," and that snapped me out of the stupid politeness mode. I backed up toward my car. The passenger moved with me, matching my steps, still talking like he could talk me into standing still. "You think I'm gonna rob you in front of cameras? Come on." He said cameras again, like it was a magic spell. I got to my door, and he reached for my wrist. Not a grab, more like a "let's keep you here" touch. I jerked away and got in, and my roommate was already halfway in his side. The driver sped up, and for a second I thought he was going to block us in, but he hesitated like he didn't want to commit unless he had to. I slammed the door and started the engine. The passenger's face changed when he realized I was leaving. The polite mask dropped. He stepped closer and said something I couldn't hear through the glass. Then he smacked my window with the flat of his hand, hard enough to make it pop. I threw the car into reverse and backed out crooked, tires squealing like an idiot. We made it out of the lot and onto the road. I looked in my mirror and saw the sedan pull out behind us. It didn't immediately follow the same lane. It hung back, then switched lanes, then hung back again, like it was deciding. My roommate told me not to go home. I didn't. I drove to the nearest well-lit place that wasn't our address, a fast food restaurant with a line of cars. I pulled in, circled the building, and parked where I could see the entrance and the road. The sedan cruised by slow, then kept going. It didn't turn in. It didn't stop. It just passed like it was checking if we'd panic and head to an empty street. I sat there shaking, staring at my phone like it had betrayed me. I opened my Craigslist messages and scrolled up. The guy's number wasn't saved, just the thread. I clicked his profile. Fresh account, no history. Of course. When we got back home later, I deleted the listing and thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 nights after that, I got a call from a local detective. He didn't sound dramatic. He sounded tired. He asked if I'd tried to sell a phone and meet a buyer by the highway grocery store. He said they had a report from another person who'd been assaulted in that exact lot the same night, and my plate had been caught on a nearby camera because I'd left so fast. I told him everything, including the SIM card thing. There was a pause, and then he said, "That's what I needed to hear." He explained it without teaching me how to do anything, just enough for it to make sense. They weren't trying to buy phones, they were trying to get access to accounts. They'd been using the same script with different listings in different lots. A week later, he called back and told me they picked up 2 guys in a traffic stop with a stack of SIM cards and a bag full of cheap phone cases, plus a handwritten list of meetup locations. The grocery store I'd been at was on the list. He didn't tell me names, he didn't tell me charges. He just told me I'd done the right thing by leaving when I felt the shift. The dumb part is how many little choices I justified because I wanted it to be easy. He texted "park near carts," and I did it. He kept drifting so I'd stand between cars, so it's not awkward, and I stayed put only because my roommate didn't move. I even brought a counterfeit pen like the risk was fake bills, not two men trying to keep me in place. When the detective called later, he said another seller had been jumped in that same lot after being talked into verification steps. Hearing that made the whole script click. The camera's line wasn't reassurance. It was a test to see if you'd relax. For the next week, every black sedan made me check my mirrors. I kept replaying the moment his hand hit my window and wondering how close I'd been to doing the polite thing and standing still. After that, I stopped meeting anyone from Craigslist in parking lots, no matter how safe they sounded. I sold the phone to a kiosk at the mall for less money and felt relieved. Been paying for the privilege of not being stupid again. When my lease got raised, my solution was Craigslist. I'd never looked for a roommate online before, but enough people acted like it was normal that I convinced myself it was just how you did things now. I posted a simple ad: 1 bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment, month to month, utility split. I didn't post my exact address, just the neighborhood and a few photos of the living room and kitchen. The replies came in waves. Most were obvious garbage, people asking if I'd rent the whole unit for half, people who couldn't answer basic questions, people who wanted to move in tonight. Then I got an email from a guy named Eli. His message was long, polite, and weirdly specific. He said he worked nights at a warehouse, didn't party, didn't have friends over, and liked things quiet. Then he asked practical questions, but the kind that didn't feel like roommate questions. What floor my unit was on, whether the building had an elevator, whether the front desk was staffed overnight, whether packages were left in the lobby, whether the side door latched, whether the mailroom was locked, and if there were cameras in the hallway. He asked if my unit number was visible from the elevator. When I pushed back and said I wasn't giving unit numbers over email, he replied, "Totally understand, just planning ahead." Planning ahead for what? I ignored the access questions and told him we could meet in the lobby first, then tour the unit. He agreed and offered to come the next evening. Right before the meeting, he asked if I'd be alone. I said no, a friend would be there. He replied, "Okay, just don't want to make anyone uncomfortable," like he was the one doing me a favor. My friend Maya came over and sat with me in the lobby around 7. We picked a spot within view of the security desk and the front doors. At 7:05, a guy walked in wearing a clean hoodie, jeans, and work boots. He didn't look scary. He looked forgettable, which is worse in its own way. He introduced himself as Eli and shook my hand like a job interview. His grip was too firm, and his smile landed a half-second late, like he was timing it. He asked Maya if she lived with me, and when she said no, his eyes stayed on her a second too long before he turned back to me. The tour was normal for the first minute. He complimented the kitchen. He nodded at the living room like he was mentally placing furniture. Then he started asking again about access. "So the building locks at night? Does the side door ever stick? Do people prop it open?" He asked where I kept spare keys. I laughed and said I didn't. He didn't laugh with me. In my hallway, there's a little utility closet with a water heater and a shelf. He opened it like he owned the place. He didn't touch anything, just looked inside and shut it. Then he went to the bathroom and ran the faucet, watching the water like he was testing pressure. Maya gave me a look over his shoulder, the kind of look that says, "We're not letting this guy live here." Back in the living room, he asked what my schedule was like. I told him I work mornings. He said, "So you're gone early?" Not as a question, as a statement. Then he asked if I had a dog. I said no. He said, "Good," like that was a feature. Maya stepped in and asked for references or a previous landlord contact. He said he could get those later and asked if he could take a quick video of the place to show his brother. I said no, photos were enough. His face tightened for half a second, then he smoothed it out and said, "Fair." He looked down at his phone, typed something, and then said he had to go. After he left, Maya said what I was already thinking. That wasn't a roommate interview, that was a walkthrough. I felt stupid because I'd invited him in. I deleted the listing and blocked his email, and I told myself that was that. 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the building app. Reminder, Do not let unknown persons in. Someone has been attempting to tailgate through the front door. It was the kind of message buildings send when something's been happening enough to irritate staff. I stared at it and tried to go back to sleep. Then I heard a soft knock on my door. Not pounding, not frantic, controlled, like someone testing if you're awake. I didn't move. The knock came again, same rhythm. Then I heard the metal scrape of something against the lock, faint but real, followed by a small click like a tool slipping. My stomach went cold because that wasn't wrong apartment. That was trying. I stepped into my bedroom closet and shut the door because it was the only spot in the apartment without a window facing the hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone dialing 911. While it rang, I heard a new sound, the soft beep of my keypad lock failing. Whoever was outside wasn't just jiggling a doorknob. They were trying codes. The dispatcher asked my address, and I whispered it. She told me to stay quiet and asked if I could see the person. I couldn't, but I could hear breathing close to the door like a face near the keypad. Then I heard footsteps retreating, fast but not running, and the elevator dinged down the hall. I stayed in the closet until I heard a hard knock and a voice identifying as police. When I opened the door, 2 officers were in the hallway with the building's overnight security guard. The guard asked if I'd recently posted any listings online. That's when it stopped being random and turned into, he came back. They walked me downstairs and showed me a still image pulled from the hallway camera. The guy was wearing a baseball cap and a mask, but the eyes and the shape of his face were enough. It was Eli. The guard told the officers they'd had reports of a man tailgating behind residents and checking doors on different floors over the past week. Testing, not forcing. The cops took my statement and told the manager to resecure the side door because someone had been propping it open, and they advised me to change any codes and not to post more listings tied to my building. The next day, the manager emailed everyone that patrols were increased and that anyone caught letting strangers in would be fined. A week later, the security guard told me they'd finally caught the guy because he tailgated onto a floor where a tenant was a cop. He tried the wrong door, got confronted, and didn't get to float away like he'd been doing. I changed every code and password I could think of, but I knew the part that mattered was already taken. My routine, my layout, my door, the fact that I lived alone. I moved out at the end of the month, ate the cost, and slept on a friend's couch for a while. People told me I was overreacting, that most Craigslist roommates are fine. Maybe. But that one wasn't looking for a room. He was looking for a building full of doors, and I'd been kind enough to show him which one was mine.